Coming up on today's Philadelphia Eagles now, we're going to dissect what went wrong for the Birds in that loss to the New York Jets. This Lane Johnson injury update, not good for Philadelphia. And outside of Lane Johnson, the best right tackle in football, this Eagles team is really banged up. Before we dive in, just want to say thank you to the Bird Gang worldwide for supporting the show. Our watch party against the Jets popped off, 90,000 views. We picked up 2,000 new subscribers. And we're on that road to 60,000 subscribers. So if you want Eagles shows every single day, led by yours truly, hit that sub button. And right now, let's start the show. Last time we talked about a Philadelphia Eagles loss was in the Super Bowl, so it's a little bit of an odd feeling waking up on this Monday morning. This is Eagles Now. I'm Chase Sr. Appreciate all of you for being here with us. Also appreciate Roan for sponsoring today's show. You can get 20% off your order at roan.com/chatsports. I'm wearing one of their Roan commuter shirts right now, and this is why I really like this company. High-quality men's clothing, breathable and stretchable fabric, which is really comfortable and high quality, as I noted. There's no need to go to the dry cleaner because the more that you wear these shirts, wrinkles actually release over time. This anti-odor technology is always great because you can wear Roan from the golf course to the office, out hanging out with some friends, or on a date. They also have dress shirts, polos, pants, and shorts, everything that you need for your wardrobe. That's what Roan has to offer, and their commuter collection can really spice up your wardrobe so that you're looking and feeling good. 20% off your order at roan.com/chatsports. We'll put that link in the comment section and in the description of this video. So a bizarre and sloppy loss for the Philadelphia Eagles against the New York Jets in the Meadowlands at MetLife. And I want to dissect what went wrong in this Eagles defeat. There are now no undefeated teams left in the NFL. San Francisco, Philadelphia, both getting handed L's yesterday by some high-quality defense. There's also a lot of major injury news to get to that directly impacts this team moving forward with the Miami Dolphins coming to town on Sunday Night Football. We have to begin here with the most notable injury for Philadelphia, and that is the high ankle sprain for Lane Johnson, the best right tackle in the game. Left early in the first quarter after getting rolled up on. According to reports, it's a left high ankle sprain. The good news here, x-rays negative. The bad news is his meaningful impact for this football team, but also the timeline here. A high ankle sprain, typically a 3 to 4 week injury, but we know that offensive linemen have come back earlier from that type of ailment, especially Lane Johnson, who's an Iron Man. And last year, he needed surgery for his groin area, was still playing all throughout the playoffs, playing at a high level. He shut out Nick Bosa in the NFC Championship game, who went on to win Defensive Player of the Year. The impact of this Lane Johnson injury, if he is out for an extended period of time. Since Johnson was drafted in the first round, Chip Kelly regime out of Oklahoma, the Philadelphia Eagles have gone 84, 48-1 when he plays. When he is out of the lineup, not playing, the Eagles are 13-22 when he does not. To summarize that, the Eagles are a much better, much more complete, much more dominant, and better team with Lane Johnson as compared to without him. Now, the player who replaced him was Jack Driscoll yesterday, a solid backup swing tackle who's had some decent moments in the midnight green. He's also really struggled. There's some chatter coming out of the NovaCare complex right now that maybe the Eagles will experiment with Jordan Mailata starting at right tackle, and then the Eagles going with a different player at left tackle. Could it be Tyler Steen? Could it be Roderick Johnson? Could it be Fred Johnson? One of those players filling in there at left tackle. For Driscoll, if he continues to start at right tackle, and he's had a lot of experience because Johnson has been injured, you go Mailata at left tackle. But yesterday against the Jets, Driscoll really struggled against a very good defense. 43 snaps, 1 sack, 1 quarterback hit, 8 pressures, and 6 hurries. Lane Johnson since 2020 as a whole, more than 1,300 snaps, 0 sacks, and 3 quarterback hits. That's the impact that I'm talking about, and that's why Johnson not only is one of the best right tackles in the game of football, one of the best offensive tackles in the game of football. And you look at the Eagles' year-by-year record since 2016, without Lane Johnson. In 2016, they went 2-8. 2017, 1-0. 2018, 0-1. Eagles in 2019, 3-1, 0-1 in the playoffs. In 2020, 2-7. 2021, 1-3. Last year, 1-1. That's an overall record since 2016 of 10-22. So that's what's problematic here for Philadelphia, is that Lane Johnson is hurt, could be out for a little while. He takes away from the success of this Eagles offense. Jalen Hurts, as we're about to talk about here in a little while, was running for his life, but that's not the only injury that we have to get to for the Eagles. More on that coming up around the corner. First, though, today's poll question is this. Eagles lose to the Jets. That was a defense that overwhelmed Philadelphia. Jalen Hurts looked confused. They were physically dominant, was New York, and their sideline to sideline and vertical speed, very impressive. Your level of concern with the Eagles after this defeat, is it high? Is it low? You let me know down in the comments section. More reasons to be concerned here about this ball club. Jalen Hurts played poorly in this game for Philadelphia. Brian Johnson, another head scratcher when it came down to game management, situational play calling, and then the lack of red zone efficiency continues to be a problem. Philadelphia also top 5 in injury rate under Nick Sirianni in 2021 and in 2022, meaning they suffered very few injuries. They're one of the healthiest teams in the league back-to-back years. This year already, a bevy of injuries across the board. Offensive line, secondary, linebacker, list goes on. What's also a concern is that last year, Philadelphia's offensive line was a very healthy unit. That's why they were one of the best units in the NFL. They started a total of 6 offensive lineman players in 2022. Already, Cam Jurgens out, Sua Opeta in. Now Lane Johnson might be out for the foreseeable future. And the injury woes here. 6 different starting secondaries for the Eagles in 6 games. 15 different defensive backs have suited up and gotten a regular season snap already. 6 corners and safeties making their NFL debut. And now for Philadelphia, the NFL's #1 ranked offense and the Miami Dolphins is coming to town on Sunday Night Football. It does not get easier. And I said this yesterday during our postgame show. Instant reaction is that the Eagles avoided the Super Bowl hangover. They're 5-1. That's great, right? Anybody would have taken that at the start of the season. But now you're 5-1. You should be 6-0 going into the meat of this schedule. Injuries elsewhere, as I teased a little while ago. Reed Blankenship, blindside block off Alan Lazard. He hurt his ribs. Darius Slay already missed the game because of a knee. Jalen Carter, ankle sprain. Avonte Maddox already out. Lane Johnson with that ankle. Cam Jurgens with the foot. Quez Watkins, the problematic hamstring. Justin Evans' neck. Sidney Brown hamstring. And Eli Ricks with a knee injury also getting injured yesterday. So injuries are something that sometimes you cannot avoid. And for Philadelphia, in 2 years under Nick Sirianni, they've been a really healthy team. That is, of course, a credit to the players for being prepared, and the medical staff for doing a good job, but sometimes you can't do anything about injuries at the NFL because this is a physical game. From the injury front and the implications of that to Jalen Hurts. It's Overreaction Monday. Is Jalen Hurts regressing? I don't think so. I understand that he had his worst game of the season, kind of his worst game in 2 years, in my opinion, considering how he played, and the normal fact that Hurts does not put the ball in harm's way, and yesterday he did that a couple of times, 3 interceptions, could have had more interceptions, looked flustered and confused by that Jets defense. But for Hurts, there's a couple of things that go into this, right? I don't think he's regressing because you look at how the season has progressed. You know, after a bad week 1 against New England, week 2, he's better against the Vikings, then better against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He was awesome against the Washington Commanders. Goes on the road, played really well against the Rams. And yesterday, he had a dud. There's no doubt about that. But with Jalen Hurts here, a couple of numbers that I want to talk about that do paint a story for why he's struggling and why the Eagles have struggled to get that offense going like it was last year. He's thrown 7 interceptions in 6 games. This year, 7 touchdowns and 7 picks. That's a far cry from what he did last year when he had 22 passing touchdowns, 13 rushing touchdowns. He had 8 total turnovers last year, 6 interceptions, 2 lost fumbles. He kept the ball out of harm's way. That's a big reason why he was so elite last year and finished runner-up to Patrick Mahomes in MVP voting. This year, after throwing 6 picks, a year ago. He's already surpassed that number through 6 games this year. All of these things can also be true. Offensive line was not good. The Eagles really did miss Lane Johnson. Sua Opeta, after a good game last week and replacing Cam Jurgens, not as good this week. I thought Jordan Mailata struggled a little bit. Jason Kelce would probably tell you he'd like to have a couple of snaps back. And because of that, Hurts was running for his life. It's hard to play quarterback in that manner when your quarterback's scrambling all over the yard. I thought also he struggled to process. He made bad decisions with the football, and the Jets have caused quarterback issues. You think about some of the QBs who have struggled this year against this Jets defense. This is a team that if they had Aaron Rodgers, they would be one of the elite teams in the AFC, in my opinion. I think they could challenge the Miami Dolphins, and I can't wait to see what that Jets defense can do against Miami. But Patrick Mahomes struggled against the Jets. Josh Allen had an awful game against New York. Oddly enough, Dak Prescott had one of his best games of the season at home against this Jets team right after they won that Week 1 game and they hosted New York in that blowout. I do love the mentality, though, of Jalen Hurts, and I believe in him as a person and a player. He owned it at the podium after the game. He said, I have to be better. I didn't make the right read. I got confused. The Jets had my number, but we're going to bounce back, and he's a believer that when you go through these types of struggles, it makes you stronger as an individual and as a team. Donovan McNabb, sometimes when he was one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, he struggled to take accountability for the Eagles losing games. Jalen Hurts takes all of the accountability, and I also like how Philadelphia, the team leader, said, Nick Sirianni, we don't need you to address the team here. The leaders of this team are going to talk to one another as a group. We're going to take accountability and say, we have to be better. The coaches sometimes put us in a position to succeed. We're the ones who are costing ourselves. So I believe in Jalen Hurts as a person, as a player, and I believe there's a trickle-down effect for the rest of this Eagles organization, and I like that standard. But that's why this loss is so frustrating, because the Eagles failed to meet their organizational standard, and we've been accustomed to seeing this team win so many games over the last couple of years. Also, if you're concerned and panicked about Jalen Hurts, there were other quarterbacks who struggled in Week 6. It was a weird, wild, wacky week in the NFL. Patrick Mahomes didn't play well. Josh Allen shut down by the Giants defense. Joe Burrow continued his struggles. Jalen Hurts, Kirk Cousins, Trevor Lawrence. Brock Purdy had his worst game as a pro after he was on that heater. These types of things happen. But what annoys me, as I alluded to a little while ago, the Eagles seemed as though they overlooked their opponent. They were not ready to play. They came into that game cocky, undefeated, thinking that they were going to roll over the Jets because they didn't have Aaron Rodgers, and there was uncharacteristic play for a Nick Sirianni-led team. They played a clean brand of football for a really long time. Yesterday against the Jets, turnovers. DeVonta Smith has been one of the more sure-handed and best wide receivers in the game since coming into the league out of Alabama after winning the Heisman. How about the drops that he had? And he even said after the game, I flat out dropped him. There's nothing to correct. I just dropped the football. But some of the penalties, and then the red zone struggles continuing. The calls from Brian Johnson, getting in late, forcing Sirianni to call a timeout, or Jalen Hurts to have to snap the ball a little bit earlier than what he wanted to do, or rush the play. You have to clean these types of things up. And going into the season, I talked about how it's going to be a little bit of a concern going from Shane Steichen to Brian Johnson and Jonathan Gannon to Sean Desai. Sean Desai, you can make the argument, has been, outside of Jeff Stoutland, one of the best coaches for this Eagles team this entire year, because I don't believe that the defense has been a massive, massive problem. And I think that the Eagles defense played well yesterday. Their effort got spoiled. On the bright side of things, how about what A.J. Brown is doing? He is now number 2 among all wide receivers in receiving yards this year. He's been on another level. He's on an absolute heater. And it started after a couple of down weeks to start the year against New England Week 1, Minnesota Week 2, against the Buccaneers in Week 3. 14 targets, 9 catches, a $131 against that was against Tampa Bay. Against Washington the following week, 13 targets, 9 catches, 175 yards, 19.4 yards per carry. Against the Rams 2 weeks ago, 8 targets, 6 grabs, 127, average yards per catch of 21. And then yesterday, he was one of the only people on the offensive side of the football who brought it, who played well, who played up to his standard with another monster day. The previous 3-game stretch was the best stretch for an Eagles wide receiver in 71 years. And then A.J. Brown goes out there, has another day in which he surpasses 100 receiving yards. It's great that him and Jalen Hurts have that connection. I actually think that he could benefit from the Eagles getting DeVonta Smith and Dallas Goedert more involved. And how about their lack of running game yesterday? Like, the Eagles kind of ignored that a little bit. I never like a game plan where Jalen Hurts has to throw it 45 times when the Eagles have this type of well-balanced offense, especially with an offensive line that's without Lane Johnson and does well with run blocking. That matchup kind of favored the Jets with allowing them to get after the quarterback with that vaunted pass rush. So you look ahead to next week here. Miami Dolphins coming to town. One loss this year. Matchup between two 5-1 teams. Miami's been rolling offensively. Tua Tagovailoa has been an MVP candidate. They are fast. They have weapons everywhere. Mike McDaniel, their head coach, very creative in a Kyle Shanahan sense. So who you got? Philadelphia, Miami, monster game in primetime. The Eagles are favorites, -2. For whatever reason, this is my early read on this game, and I kind of had a weird feeling yesterday for the Eagles. Like, I didn't take them to cover the spread because I thought that it could be an ugly, grimy game, and it was. But when you look at this Dolphins team, I have some weird feeling that the Eagles are going to go out there with a really dominant performance in front of a litty Lincoln Financial Field, and somehow they're going to be able to overpower Miami from a physical sense. But, of course, it all comes down to how injured the Eagles are all throughout this week going into that game, and we'll see what happens over the next few days. This is Eagles Now by Chat Sports. Make sure you subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I hope you're having an awesome Monday.